Hey there viewers, welcome back to another episode of Ray of All Trades. Today on the bench is a pretty exciting puzzle, we'll call it that. A friend of mine gave me a chainsaw, nice chainsaw, a Stihl MS250, and it's in every imaginable piece you can think of. It had a bent crankshaft, bent connecting rod is actually what it had. I ordered the parts, I don't know, about a month ago, something like that. The box that I received, and thank you, by the way, to my friend if he happens to be watching this. It's kind of an exciting project for me. Check this out. It's a box of parts. Let's see if we can work. New seals, new fuel line, impulse line, fuel filter, and intake boot. So, I have got a project ahead of me. This is going to be fun. Got some cleaning to do. Put the pieces that I won't need right away, all from the outside, out of the way. So that's going to be the end. Intake, all those, an impulse line, right there. Yeah, like I said, my friend asked me if I wanted any spare parts, and I asked him if it was a complete saw. He said, well, yeah, it's a complete saw. It's in about 50 pieces or 100 pieces, and and I said, well, that would be a fantastic project to assemble, put together. And he looked at me like I had 3 heads and said, are you sure you want to do all that? And I said, sure. I think it'd be a fun, cool puzzle to put together. So it looks like I bought a new muffler. I bought obviously a new crank. New crank, it comes with new bearings. New muffler bolts came with the muffler, obviously. Got new seals, new crank seals. Got one nut for the muffler. Sure there's a second one in here. Yep, sure is. Okay, another nut for the muffler. Alright, so those parts are new. If there's any parts that I'm going to be replacing, I'm going to go ahead and throw them out. Looks like I do need a piston. Oh wait, it's right there on that edge. Let me check this before I condemn this piston. This might be salvageable, you know. We're going to be replacing the fuel line. Let's go ahead and toss that. Do not have a new breather. And toss the old crank. I need that carburetor. Need to do some cleaning. And I think this is doable. Like I said, I just need to do some cleaning, but yeah, I think this is doable. Okay, we're going to start with some Mr. Clean. It's not a real strong cleaner. I'm going to fill it up with water. Let's get the parts in it first. Alright, let's fill it up with water. Hey there friends, welcome back. Long story short, I bought a minimum number of parts to put it together, only to find out that the crankshaft I bought wasn't the right one for the saw. So I had done the entire video, went back, realized that the taper on the crankshaft was just a little bit too short, and what it was causing was the flywheel was recessed too far back into the body for the starter handle to engage. Really nothing I could do about it. I didn't want to modify the saw that much, so I went back to the drawing board and I ordered a brand new piston cylinder assembly that fits the original parts that I was planning on utilizing for an MS210. I don't know if there was a couple of different versions or if it was something had been modified originally on it. So anyway, I went back to the drawing board and I bought all new pieces for it. But you'll see, it's no kidding, a jigsaw puzzle. It's got pieces everywhere, and luckily I've worked on a few Stihls in my day, so we'll see if we can piece it together. It's going to be kind of a fun project, and I really appreciate my friend giving me this saw. Going to be fun just to see if it's like a game. I bought a new muffler for it. Don't exactly remember why I bought a new muffler for it. This one didn't look in too bad a shape. Maybe it came with a kit that I bought. I don't know. Anyway, got a brand new muffler for it. So we'll put this one away. The flywheel that it had was stripped. The keyway was stripped, so I ordered a brand new flywheel. That should be right here. Much better. Keyway is not stripped. Actually doesn't look too bad. Made in China product. I've already replaced so the original fuel line, the original boot, I have a new one of those as well. The impulse line is in the box somewhere, but anyway, I have a brand new impulse line for it. The crankshaft I tried to put in that matched the old one was this one, and you can see the connecting rod is actually what's bent on it. But what was wrong was this taper was just a little bit off from that one, and even by the eye I couldn't see it, and probably with a micrometer I probably could have gotten a lot closer, but basically this was recessed too far down to allow the dogs to match up. The dog's on the starter, right? This right here. So it wasn't allowing this to match up, and here it was missing, and it was because it was sitting too far out. It couldn't reach in there far enough to grab it. So basically this was too far in because of that taper, so it was skipping. So a new flywheel. I had actually repaired the old piston. I had cleaned it up and took a lot of the burrs out and freed up the rings, and felt pretty good about it. At least I was willing to give it a try. But since I'm replacing it, I got a whole brand new motor for it. So the parts I received: 2 new bearings, 2 new crank seals, new spark plug. I'm gonna bet that's a wrist pin bearing. That's what it looks like. And what else did we receive? New bottom case. Looks pretty close. New cylinder. New rings, new wrist pin, new wrist pin keepers, new piston that was matched to this. So Just look at the machining real quick just to see if there's any kind of burrs or anything I need to worry about. It really doesn't look too bad. I wasn't crazy about the way this cylinder fit up the first time I reassembled this anyway. Pretty unlikely I'm going to use that plug. I'll link all the parts in the description at the end. So the original crankshaft I purchased that was designed for the 021 was this one. This one wouldn't fit the old piston. It wouldn't fit the old, it didn't have a wrist pin bearing. It had a whole bunch of different items. So the crankshaft that I had, that I tried to swap, was for the an old 019, and it matched up perfectly with the 021 or the 210. It matched up perfectly except for the taper. And visually it looked the same, measurements, connecting rod size, everything matched the same, and I said, aha, I've got the right crankshaft. It was not. So I went back to the original place that I bought the crankshaft and bought the rest of the pieces that go with it. So all of this should match up because it was designed to work as a complete unit, and then the rest of this bolts into that casing. So that should be good. Let's see, yep, that actually matches up. On the other one it wouldn't. So that matches up. There must have been a break in the manufacturing process in serial numbers that they changed from this design to that design. So, because everything I'm finding matches up with this style part. Get back to that. So we verified that the wrist pin bearing drops in. Let's see, the wrist pin drops in with no problem. Piston fits with no problem. Alright, let's go ahead and get the bearings on. Always try to put your numbers facing out whenever possible, so that the next guy, if for some reason, you know, I mean, you could spin this one and read it, but if for some reason it was a different design, the next guy would want to be able to read the bearing to find out what it is before he pulls it off, he or she. So use a 15mm socket and my mighty Thor hammer. I'm making sure that I'm hitting on the inside race of the bearing. You don't want to hit on the outside. As soon as it changes pitch, it means it's bottomed out. .6202 bearings. Again, same thing on this side, just deep well socket. That sounded like it changed pitch. Appears to be bottomed out. Let's make sure that it fits. Yep, just making sure that the bearings fit inside those grooves. If you don't get it in far enough, they won't drop in there like that. Let's get the piston rings on the piston. On the piston, you've got locator pins. For this style piston, they're at the top half. Some of them I've seen have been at the bottom half. So pay attention to what you got. But you've got two locator pins. Those locator pins correspond with a, I'll try to get you to see that. I don't know if you can notice, but the bottom half of the ring sticks out further than the top half. So the ring itself has a shape like that, a cut like that, which means that the locator pin sits on the top half of that. If it was like this, those two sharp ends would have been hitting the locator pin. So make sure you've got them sitting on there the right direction. And the locator pins force it to be offset, and it keeps it in line on the piston so it doesn't get hung, so that the ring doesn't get hung in any of those grooves, those openings. So
Soap this up, WD-40. There's a tool for these that looks like a pair of duckbill pliers, combination duckbill pliers and snap ring pliers, because they push out versus pulling in. If I can find them, I will link them in the description. I do not have a pair, which I hate recommending something that I haven't tried first, but I know that there's a lot of people who have tried them. I just always use my fingers. So all I'm doing is massaging the piston ring around the grooves until I can get it to drop into the very bottom groove. This piston ring is extremely hard material wise, so if you get too aggressive with it, it will snap. There we go. And then when it compresses, it should go into that locator pin. Let's get a little bit more WD-40. WD-40 used to be flammable and you could use it as starting fluid. And I don't know when they changed, but I know that you can't use it as starting fluid anymore, at least not that I've seen. So I think Project Farm did a study on it and proved it wasn't flammable anymore, or at least not flammable enough. Maybe that's the case. It probably says flammable on here somewhere, but it's not flammable enough to work as a test for seeing if you have spark. So lube up the wrist pin bearing, drop that in there. So I'll try to modify the keepers. That's just way too long of a barb. Believe it or not, it will throw off the weight and these can come apart. So I just try to cut half of that barb off if you can, the one that's sticking down. I'll try to demonstrate. So that barb there, I'm going to be cutting off. Can you guys see that? So I'm not cutting off the circle part, I'm cutting off the part that sticks down in the middle, and I'm cutting off only half of that, because you got to have something to grab, but you don't want the weight to throw off the actual. There we go. So that's what I want at the very end. So let's take one of these. Try, it keeps falling into the inside. I'll put that pin in there first to keep it from dropping in too far. And then rotate it in position. You need to rotate it. It usually goes whatever direction the barb was. Line it up 12 o'clock position. So, looking at the case, the bottom half of the case has to line up with that groove right there, that one that's sticking out. That one there that's sticking out. Has to line up with the oil pump. So that means that that side of the case is over here. That means that this over here would be the front of the saw, which means that the piston has to, that arrow faces the front of the saw. So that's going to sit in there just like that. The flywheel, the flywheel that has the taper on it, right? The flywheel itself has taper on it, is on the side with the coil, which means that it too sits in there like this. So this side of the saw is going to be facing that direction, which means that the wrist pin, the bearing goes in. That means that the piston has to go on this direction, arrow facing that way. Just put the wrist pin through the bearing, lubricated, and drop the other keeper in. This goes against everything that I've been taught, but the way that they cut the groove into the piston, the keeper won't let me put it to the 12 o'clock position. They've got a groove that stops right here and a groove that stops right there. This is a personal saw, so I don't mind if it gets destroyed. What happens is the power stroke is coming down, and at really high RPMs, you can get that spring to, the weight of the actual barb on the end of that spring can compress just a little bit, and they can come apart. I know there's a lot of people don't believe me. Just jump online and start searching. I'm not the only one who's experienced it, and I've experienced it a few times. One of the keepers will come out and it gets stuck between the piston and the cylinder, and it'll score the crap out of it. But every one of them that I've ever put at the 12 o'clock position has never had a problem. I'll drop it in there just like the other one. Mashes up on that groove. Again, I'm not crazy about it, but it works. Alright, that drops in like that. This seal about in place. So you would line up right about there. This seal may not jump that gap too well, so we may have to end up putting a piece of thin plastic on there. So there's a groove right here on the crankshaft that's trying to catch that lip. So all we're going to do is wrap it in plastic. Spray some WD-40 on it. Make sure the seals go in the right direction. And use that plastic as my guide. And then pull the plastic out. Make sure that we're still good. Yep, so that seal's about right, and that seal's about right. I got a little bit of WD-40 in here. Let's get that cleaned out. Let's make sure that the seals, the outside of the seals are clean. No WD-40 on there, because I'm about to put sealer on there, and we want it to make sure that it seals up. Alright, grab some 1184. Honda Bond, Yama Bond, any of those gasoline oil resistant sealers. Quality Sealer's your friend here. So a toothpick, not toothpick, a Q-tip, and just put a thin coat all the way around. Again, that barb or that cup goes out away from you, which means that the arrow faces forward. The tapered shaft is towards me. Just a little extra on here. Just like that. Let's line up our locator pins and our piston ring grooves. And then the square end of the piston, excuse me, of the cylinder faces that way. So the arrow faces towards the exhaust. And just wiggle it back and forth and she should drop right on. My other one did not. Just making sure that the piston moves like it's supposed to. No hang-ups, nothing like that. That all feels pretty good. It's got a little bit of a gap right there that should seal up as soon as I get it tight. If I remember right, it made it a lot easier to put the intake boot on first and put this plastic shroud on before you dropped it in. And I believe it actually, I'm going to put the impulse line on. This is what actually drives that your fuel pump and your carburetor. I'll put that line on, but I'm pretty sure I took that back off to get it in there. So grab the body of the saw. Again, the tapered side faces this way. Just slide it into position. Something like that. I can get the spark plug boot in position too while I'm at it. Coil wire. Get the coil wire in position while I'm at it. Cylinder bolts are the ones with the larger head on them. Get some Loctite on them. T27. T27. Go back into a cross pattern. Make sure they're tight. If I can still spin this by hand. Oil pump installed. Let's see. So the drum, clutch drum, grabs this wire, but the clutch grabs a hold of this. Anyway, it has a groove that this wire goes into. It grabs that wire, spins it. It in turn is spinning this piece of plastic that has these teeth on it. Those teeth engage with this set of teeth right here, which is driving an oil pump. Oil pump is pulling it out of the reservoir on the other side and pushing it up out of this hole right here. I almost forgot something. This little C-clip. It's supposed to go inside that groove. So down inside here is a groove that this clip goes on. Keeps that oil pump from going down too far. Or the oil pump drive gear from going down too far. Would have been a lot easier to do this when it was still outside of the saw. So don't make my mistake. Okay, so that C-clip goes right here into a groove, and it keeps this oiler from dropping down too far. Then the plate goes, it says top here, that means facing out, not top. Top isn't that way. Clutch on next. You can put a drop of Loctite on there if you choose to. I usually do not. Put a spark plug in for compression, just to be able to build compression so that I can tighten up this clutch. That tightened up pretty good. I'm going to pull that spark plug back out so that I can move it. Just keep checking as I go along. Pull that off. Let's finish on this side, shall we? Alright. We've got our brake band, spring keeper. I don't even know what that part's called. It's a linkage of some kind. See, this keeper, and we need the brake assembly. Let's see, is this the one that the brake band goes through? Sure looks like it, because it doesn't look like it would go through. Yeah, it doesn't go through that one. That means that the spring has to be on this one. That means that's the bottom. That means that that must go through here. Alright, and that drops into that post. And that drops onto that post. Something along those lines. That means this drops on. Nope. That drops on. There's a groove inside this post, and there's a slip hook right here. So slip that on there, put that on there, grab the E-clip that goes onto there, and grab the, in my opinion, the world's best pliers, the Van pliers here. They grab a hold of anything. They really designed those well. I don't like, not a sponsor, but man, those things, I love them. I've got a link to them in my description usually. Anytime they've saved me on a project, I usually put them in there. So spring this way. It's hooked onto there. Got it. Alright, spring goes on there. This groove. And just like that. Go ahead and get the clutch on there so I can wrap that band on it. So there's a groove here. It also has a line out here. Lines up with that arm I was telling you earlier, the oiler. Make sure that that's lined up. Looks like we're going to have to put the pilot bearing on first. Sometimes you can get them to squeeze in there. Just verifying that that lines up. Okay, one of my other videos, this right here is what's left of one of these. It's supposed to hold the chain on. And that goes next. And then E-clip. So I stole it from this saw and put it on there and ordered a new one. Kind of comical. So there's my clutch and drum. Brake band goes on an angle like this, and then rotate. Goes around the drum, and then drops into this groove down here. You may have to reset it to get it to line up. Okay, if you did everything right, it should be able to spin. If you lock the brake, it should lock, and you should be able to reset it and it should spin again. Alright, that's it for in there. Let's get that cover put on. Just 2 really short screws. Anything else on this side? Does not appear to be. Well, that's good. Let's get the fuel line put on. And fuel filter, working our way around the saw. That's the inside of the tank side. Let's fish that through. And while it's sitting loose, let's get that filter put on. Reach in and grab that. Fuel filter. Drop that in, and then turn this so that filter goes forward. What I've noticed is there's like a embossed part on the plastic, kind of guides it. I mean, it's more visual than anything else. It doesn't really grab a hold of the gasket or the hose, but it seems to line up pretty well that way. Let's go ahead and get these ground lines attached to the block. Feels like it bottomed out, and the wires aren't moving, so it should be good there. Let's get this cover on. I'm holding off on doing the flywheel because I want to have access into here if I need it. This intake boot is being held, on a lot of the bigger saws it's held with a clamp. On this one it's just held by this piece of plastic pushing onto it. So it's like spark plug. So the impulse line connects right there. The fuel line is going to go up through that hole. This intake boot is going to go through this hole, and the spark plug is coming up through the inside, it looks like here. So let's try to get all of those pieces to work in unison. Oh, and by the way, the wires come through here. And the wires appear to have the most play, So, and they're the longest, so I'd like to do those first when possible. And just feed that grommet through the hole. Pull your slack out, attach the impulse line down here on the bottom. If you lose access to that impulse line, pull it off of here because you can still access it from in here. Okay. Let's get the intake boot centered up. Okay, once the boot's in place, stick this plate on there. I'm gonna put the logo facing up. I don't think it really matters much, but I'm sure that it was installed that way originally. So one side of the ground wire, which is the shorter one, connects right here. The other one is going to come through and connect to the master control switch. Let's get that. Actually, let's get the carburetor on first. So carburetor. Get the fuel line on there. I didn't get a new gasket with this one. This old one's in actually pretty decent shape except for one tear on the outside. So as long as I'm centered up properly, I'll feel pretty good about it. Just be very careful with it. Like I said, personal saw, so I have room for mess ups. Next, how about a master control switch? There we go, master control switch. Drops into that groove down there. And then into this groove right here. Nope. Put the plate up, or this metal tang up first, and then drop it down in there. So it should be on top like that. So when that's there, you can take this ground wire and goes right there. So that when you go to shut the saw off, you do that, this metal tang touches that wire right there, completes the circuit back through here, and ground your coil, which is that screw that we put over here, and then this wire here. So it's completing it from the motor through the switch all the way back to here, and we put a ground on here. Basically, if you connected here to here is what you're doing. When you do that, it stops that from sparking. That's what shuts off your saw. How many of y'all knew that? I bet you most of you. Alright. Let's get the choke lever on. Whoops. Okay, so choke is right there. Slide this in this groove. That goes on like that, so that when you go half choke, it's right there. Let's put our ground wire back on, right in there, so that when you shut it off, it touches and grounds out. Yep, that looks pretty good. So this buffer tube goes through the top up here, just like that. Let's get the handlebar. In place.
Sorry guys, camera died.
So I put the screw for the oil pump back in, and it has a it's a plastic screw with a very coarse thread. Put that back in. Let's get the handlebar on. So I'm going to start mounting stuff where it belongs, not having it fall around. Couple of longer screws for there. Those will work. Still need one in here. Let's get the breather installed. I'm actually going to shorten this up so that the breather's right over here. Make sure it's not going to get in the way. So if it's right there. What's supposed to occur? Breather's supposed to go here. It's supposed to go across over to here, and it's supposed to be up in this area up here. My issue is this breather. Every place I put it over here is in my way. So I've had pretty good luck actually putting that breather right over here. And I'll do that at the very end. It's going to take some effort to tighten these up because you're compressing that rubber gasket. Remember that intake boot? You're compressing that and it's making a seal. So it's going to take a little bit of effort and back and forth. Just make sure it's evenly tightened and all together. Air filter. Let's see what we have left. And we'll figure out where we want to put that breather. Fits there. It's okay. Alright, so let's shorten this up to about right there. Expose some fresh hose, because the other one was a little bit loose. I'm sure somebody's going to tell me why that either has to be on that other side, but I can tell you, out of all the steel saws I work on, most of them are over here with that little plug in the end of them. So if it's that critical, I'd like to know why. So throttle linkage should go like that, which means it has to wrap into that hole up here, into the throttle linkage, just like that. Just make sure it moves. I'll try to do this so you guys can see it. Pull the trigger assembly until it matches up and snap them together. It goes into that groove. Make sure that works. Make sure that that still works. So that's half choke, or that's off choke, fast idle. Pull the trigger and it comes up where it's supposed to be and then shuts off. Okay, all that looks pretty good. Fuel lines in, impulse lines on. I've verified all of that. We are up to getting the flywheel on. So, there's keyway on the flywheel, lines up with keyway on the crankshaft. Make sure that drops on like it's supposed to. You don't want that to not fit together properly, because you will strip it. Yeah, that's there. I'm going to put a little bit of Loctite on this side. Just these things have just a habit of stripping, and I'm not exactly sure why. So a little bit of blue Loctite here is not going to hurt anything. Okay, so this should be a 1/2 inch socket. Let's put a spark plug in temporarily so that we can build some compression for tightening up this flywheel. You notice I'm just using compression. I mean, the impact gun is not really strong. It's a little 3/8 Husky impact. I think maximum when it was brand new out of the box was like 40 pounds. And I'm using compression as my backer. So it tightens up clockwise. Go. Just give a little bit of tension because that compression isn't quite enough. Let's drop our business card, put our flywheel, our coil gap. I need to loosen it up first because I see that it's not going to let me put a business card in there right away. Loosen up both sides of the coil. Slide it back. Drop a business card in there. Set up my magnet. Push my coil forward. Tighten these up by hand. These screws are a thinner diameter than most of the rest of the screws on the saw. Make sure you do not use an impact on these. Spin your flywheel, get your cart out. That should be good. Let's see, got my ground hooked up. I've already verified my impulse line. All of this is set. Let's get the starter in place. So the one with the shoulder on it goes up there. The other three here, here, and here. Make sure this still works. Okay, we're up to a muffler. So the bolts, yep. So the bolts drop into that groove there. They're square headed to keep them from turning. If you have an exhaust gasket, that's when you would put it on. This one didn't come with one. And I don't have the materials for making one right now, so I'm just going to assemble it this way. Of course, there wasn't an exhaust gasket in the original box. There wasn't one when I bought a new muffler. I'm beginning to wonder if if this version of saw just never had an exhaust gasket. If somebody's watching this video to assemble theirs, comment below if yours had an exhaust gasket on it. Or if you know if it needs to have one. I don't remember why I changed this muffler. I think maybe it came with the crankshaft. Because the other one really didn't look that bad. Just rusty. That's much better. The other one, when I would do that, it would just slip. Right, we need to verify that we have spark. Give me a ground. Like I said, I'm going to use the one that that shuts off the saw. I know that's a good ground, right? Just hold it there. I'm probably going to get shocked. You guys see that? I can see it really well. I don't know if you guys can. So that's really good spark. Let's make sure that we shut it to the off position. And it grounds. Yep, the spark went away. Go back to run. Spark's back. All those extra pulls and everything also clean some of the WD-40 out of the cylinder. Let's go ahead and put this plug back in. Snug it on down. Spark plug boot. What do I need? It looks like I need a flathead screwdriver for the low jet, which is all the way up here, high jet, which is back here, and then the idle speed is right here. So if I was adjusting idle, I'd be right there. Oof, you guys can't see anything. If I was adjusting idle, I'd be right here. If I was adjusting the high speed, but basically in the cut, right, like you're cutting wood. Want to listen for the burble, you want to adjust this one right here. And if I'm adjusting the low speed screw, it's going to be this one up in here, right through the handle. Right through the handle. Pretty sure this came from an auction, if I had to guess. So my gasoline fill is okay. My oil fill is not. Let me go see. You guys stand by. I'm gonna go see if I've got one of these. Let's see. That looks like it. Oh yeah, we got a winner. As a matter of fact, got one of those too, so let's go ahead and change it also. So the buffer tube keepers, there, there, there. What do we have left? A couple of bar nuts, bar. Guess I could just go ahead and assemble the whole thing and then just check it for oiling the old-fashioned way. I just want to make sure that that hole right there, this one, the small one, is clear, because that's where the oil is going to come through. So, did you guys just see me put the buffer tubes in? I think I was zoomed in too far. The buffer tube caps go here, here, and here. I'm going to put the bar and chain that came with it on. Let's make sure that it moves. Let's clean up. Like I said, I'm used to having a metal bar there. Need to see if one of those is available too. All this is assuming that this thing runs well. If not, then I just wasted a lot of money. Made a cool video though. Cool puzzle. At least in my mind. Legend in my own mind. A little bit on the tight side. I just made it hand tight. And it was already binding up. So I like to rotate the saw forward. Whoops. I like to rotate the saw forward and then see what kind of play I have. And then once that's got slack there, then I tighten it up enough to get to where it's just touching. And I snug it up. Okay. It's got okay compression. I mean, it's a 210. Non-ethanol premix. Where's that keeper? Is it down there? There we go. Just attaching that little barb where it belongs. Except for I just put the wrong one in. How come you guys didn't stop me? Oh, there was a few of you laughing. There we go. That snapped in. Fuel's on. Some bar oil. Just want a little bit. I just want to see if the thing even runs. has the ball still stuck in its socket. Should have caught that earlier. There we go. There we go. All right, let's open up the door, see if we can get this thing to fire, because if it does, I don't want to smoke out my little bitty garage here. Choke's on. Once. Turn up that idle a little bit. Open up our low jet a little bit. There's two of them. Let's count them in. Half. Half. One. What's this one doing? Half. Two.
think that carburetor needs a little bit of a cleaning. I tuned out the dirt that's in it right now, but it's open more than it should be, and I'm pretty confident that the jets are just kind of clogged, because I had to open up the jets a little bit more than they should have been. Anyway, not a bad little saw. We went from a jigsaw puzzle to some Chinese parts to running saw, so I'll get it. Cut up some limbs and stuff like that with it, sharpen up the chain, things like that. But I hear the burble in the sound. I'm pretty confident it'll do what I need to do. Appreciate you guys watching. You guys got anything out of the video? Love a thumbs up, comment, subscribe. All that helps the channel tremendously. So yeah, Stihl MS210, saved from a I'll say a jigsaw puzzle box.